So I am backstage now with Tamara Green. Tamara, tell me why you're here at CrimeCon.
I'm here to speak on behalf of Nicole Egan, who's written a book called Chasing Cosby, which has had some great success. And that comes at the end of a 14-year campaign to put Bill Cosby in, well, not put him in jail specifically, but to bring justice to the more than 62 women who were involved in sexual assault by him.
62 women, and you are one of them.
I was, yes, one of them, one of the early ones.
And tell me, as much as you want to, as much as you're comfortable with, what Bill Cosby did to you, how you met him, and what happened in the decades since.
Well, I was working for a friend of his, a doctor. As it turns out, he's the doctor who was prescribing the Quaaludes in question that Bill Cosby was giving to young people who wanted to have sex, and or that he wanted to have sex with, which he admitted in a deposition later. I was supposed to go through his phone book and my friend's phone book to raise money. They wanted to open a club in Los Angeles called the Bayou Club. And I was very sick. I had the regular flu back in the day, and I tried to call my boss and say, look, I can't work, I have to go home. And somehow I called Figaro Restaurant, which was owned by Bill Cosby, and he took the call. And he said, why don't you come to the restaurant and have some lunch and you'll probably feel better. And I thought, well, you know, that's what my mother would say to me. I had no doubts about it.
Did you know Cosby?
I knew him through Dr. Amar.
Through the doctor. Mm-hmm. And he was big and famous at the time.
Sure. So I arrive at the restaurant. He's in his own personal table, and the restaurant is packed. It was a huge success in those days. And he says to me, he introduces me, Cecily Tyson was there, Lonnie Elder, who wrote Sounder. There were other people regarding Sounder there. And, excuse me, he said, well, listen, do you want to take some contact or something? Would that help? And I thought, yeah, what do I know? So he goes back into his office, comes back out with these two capsules in his hand, gives them to me. Now it's lunchtime, midday, in a packed restaurant in public with his friends. I took the pills. And he was right. In about 20 minutes, I'm like, yeah, this will work. And then I started just melting into my food, and I heard him say, she must be more sick than we thought, I'll take her home. And by the time he got me home, I was essentially helpless. And, you know, in spite of trying to fight him off and all that stuff, he raped me.
And you've spent your time since. Tell me what you told me off camera a minute ago, what you told him.
Well, a tiny piece before that, my brother was in the hospital at the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles. He was dying of cystic fibrosis. And before I was well enough to go and visit him, because I did have the flu, and because I had been unconscious from being drugged from lunchtime till about 3 o'clock in the morning when I finally woke up, and it took some time to recover. When I went to the hospital, I meant to go to seek my mother's love, my mother's support, to have her hug me and tell me it was okay. And when I got there, Cosby had been there and had given my brother a portable radio, had glad-handed with the nurses and the what have you. The children were over the moon. My brother was a hero. My mother was so happy, and I just couldn't say anything about it. I just said, and my mother was, isn't he wonderful? And I said, no, Mom, he's a very bad man, but that was all I ever said to her at that time. And I called
remind me
him
of your age again. How old were you?
I was about 20-ish,
Okay.
21, something. And I spoke to him later, and I said, I'm not going to make a fuss about this, but I'm going to tell everyone I ever meet who will sit still for the rest of my life what you did to me.
Wow.
And I have, haven't I?
Wow. You told your rapist, Bill
Yes.
Cosby.
Yes.
You're a strong woman. I mean, a lot of people would never want to see their attacker again.
I know, but my mother says I have bad blood. I lose my temper all the time
Well,
and can't be stopped.
What was his response when you told him that?
He just blew me off, so to speak. He just, so what? Who's going to listen to you,
And then when all the allegations came out and the charges came out later, did you feel vindicated?
Well, in a way, but it wasn't about me anymore, I mean, it's true that I had spent 30 years ignoring it. Mm-hmm. It never leaves you, but you can isolate things in your own mind or in your heart or wherever you think you put those things. You can wrap those in a tight little box and put them somewhere and not think about them. But in a way, it destroyed my marriage because my husband understood that I had some kind of secret that I could never tell. And I didn't tell, and he decided that the secret was that I didn't love him anymore, but it was not that at all. But I can understand now in retrospect how there was a part of me that was always missing from that relationship.
Wow.
And it was awful.
What would you say to women watching that are carrying the same secret?
Make noise. Make big noise. Call them up. Tell somebody. And it doesn't matter if you're not believed, because if you keep talking about it and you keep telling about it, somebody will help you. Somebody will come forward. So 30 years later, I'm standing in my kitchen and I hear on TV that Bill Cosby is accused of molesting or sexually assaulting Andrea Constand. And my first thought was, really? At his age, he's still doing that, you know? And then I heard, as time went on, DA speak in Pennsylvania for we're not going to charge him. They started saying things like he said, she said, which is the standard, we're not going to do it. I called him. I called Bruce Castor, I called the cops, I called the dispatch sergeant, I called the crime lab. I mean, I called everybody in Pennsylvania. And finally, they got a new DA, and the DA charged Cosby about, I don't know, a couple of weeks before the statute of limitations ran in Pennsylvania. And that's how he came to trial. Twice, and the second time he went to jail. Where he is in now, where he's now.
And have you had contact with him or spoken with him?
No. But during the times when I was doing interviews, right at the time in 2005 and 2006, when the news first broke about Andrea Constand, he would call in, or his camp would call in and say, never heard of her, never saw her before, don't recognize her name, her maiden name, her married name, or otherwise. And I said to Dan Abrams once, I put my hands like this and said, well, I don't think it was my face he was interested in, do you? You know?
Yeah.
And then Rita Cosby, who was a wonderful reporter, she said, they deny that they ever saw you. And I said, what do you expect him to say? I know her, I remember her. Yes, we went out, but no, it had to be a blanket denial. He had no choice but to say he never heard of me. But it didn't matter. And in fairness to him, he's probably met 10 million people between here and there. But I don't think he forgot. I think he kept his scorecard, and I think he knew every one of us. But the shocking thing is that finally at the end, 62 women came forward. But there were others that called me and said, I can't come forward. I'd never told my husband. He would be blown away if I had kept a secret from him 20 years, you know, which I understood completely.
Yeah.
And my children, I don't want them to know, or I still work in the industry and I would lose my job, that kind of thing. And so there are other women too, but 62 showed up and signed up and said, you can count me in as an accuser.
Well, God bless you for speaking out, and thank you for sharing your story and her message to everybody watching.
Make noise. Tell about it. If you're trapped, climb out the window, throw something, do something. And if you feel all alone, call a helpline. Call us. Call some prevention line. I'm still emotional about it, but all I can say is stand up, and someone like me or someone else like this man here, we will stand with you.